Welcome to the summit, The Beauty of Existence as You. And I can now introduce you to Gail Brenner.
Hello.
Hi, and thank you for being here. And you're a clinical psychologist, you have a PhD in psychology, and you're also an author, and you're a group facilitator, and you help people see their true nature, or what are they in essence, and kind of relate to the essence of what you are, rather than the noise or the thoughts, the feelings, the outer life that we always seem to reach out to and get distracted by. But you point to what they are in essence. And
my primary interest about that is in everyday life. Like, how I think that's the edge of non-duality actually right now, which is like, how do we live this truth? How do we find it and know it? And I think lots of people have a taste, or at least a sense, but then the question is like, okay, well, what do we do with that in our everyday lives?
Yeah. And your book that I read, Suffering is Optional, it talks about all that, like how do you actually do it? And there are some guiding principles, and so how do you do it?
Well, my quick answer would be moment by moment. You know, we can't solve big problems in the big picture of things, but we get to live our lives out of our mind and out of our stories right in the moment that we're in. And that's where life gets really interesting, because it's a natural human tendency, as we all know, to distract. We distract ourselves, we avoid our experience, we keep ourselves super busy, we're on our phones. And these are the ways that we distract ourselves from what's actually here now and available in the present moment. So the short answer to the how is keep coming back, coming home, opening to what's here.
Yeah, because what's here is what we are actually, right? The existence, the awareness, the being, just that. And then everything that appears is also that, but it's temporary. So it's already gone by the time it arises. It's it's very flimsy. It is kind of dreamlike, the world, right? As soon as it arises, it's changed already, but there's always something in us that's always there.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what's so amazing about living this teaching, because we can get caught up in our minds, in our patterns, and stuck in our emotions, or whatever, you know, happens to many of us on a regular basis. And there's always the possibility of taking a breath, of disengaging our attention from the mind, which is huge, disengaging our attention from the mind and just recognizing, opening, expanding into exactly what's here right now. And that's how those identities, those separate self identities, begin to soften and hopefully eventually fall away, when we are able to recognize them, not just be living in them, but recognizing them. Like, for example, an identity of feeling inadequate, which I think happens to a lot of people in our culture right now. So being able to recognize when that story of I'm inadequate takes hold, and be able to see that, which is key. And then there's the possibility of like, I don't have to believe that. I can just see the temporary nature of those thoughts and let them come and go, and not identify with them as who I am.
Yeah. And sometimes, we do feel like I'm not enough, or something is lacking, something is missing in my life. And there's that, and there's a subtle fear very often too, and contractions. And so what do we do with that? Like, how do those kind of dissipate, or how do we not believe in them and relate to them all the time?
Well, the first thing is if we don't explore them, they keep carrying us on into the momentum of that separate and personal identity. So if we don't explore the idea or the mental concept of, for example, I am inadequate, we will keep feeling inadequate. We're going to make choices based in our lives based on that identity. We're going to be unhappy and just feel like life is kind of blah and okay, but not the vibrant aliveness that's possible. So the first thing is to turn our attention inward toward ourselves. And my feeling about this investigation is that it has to be loving and kind and compassionate toward ourselves, because when we turn our attention inward, at one level we notice objects that come and go, like feelings and thoughts and things like that, but much of this is held very deeply and we've lived it for a very long time, and it comes from, for many of us, childhood trauma, or at least difficult experiences in our childhoods. And so this investigation needs a lot of care and safe space so that we can go to the hard places.
Yeah. Yeah, I think fear is a big factor. Like we fear what's going to happen, also because we are stuck in certain patterns for so long. So it's like, I don't know what's going to happen, right? It's that discomfort and fear that then it's easier just to stay the same or just hide in the patterns.
Exactly. And acknowledging that fear. I mean, it's so important to notice, because when there's avoidance, there's fear. And so to say, when I'm avoiding, there's fear present here. And then that becomes an invitation to bring our attention not out there, but in here, to be interested and curious about that experience that we call fear. And to just see, what is that, to ask, like, from this place of openness, fear is here right now, or something is here that I'm labeling fear. And what is that, to get to know what that is, because it's an expression from consciousness, but it has a conditioned feel to it. It is conditioned, and in that sense, it feels kind of flat and limited and not alive. So it's a beautiful opportunity for an investigation inside.
Yeah. Yeah. And you write about the sacred return. Is that what happens when we really see all these thoughts, feelings, all these beliefs and concepts, all that, when we kind of see through them as just that and nothing more to that, nothing we need to identify with? Is that when we kind of return to the sacred we always are, but now we actually see it, or it's experienced, or it's lived?
That's right. It feels like a return, but it's actually, as you're saying, it's not. It's a waking up to the moment of what's actually true right then and now. So realizing, like, oh, I've been lost and now I'm here and present again. It feels like a return, but it's not a return. It's just a realization of what's always been the case, that there is this aliveness, that I am not what my thoughts tell me that I am. These are truths that are always true. So when we get caught up, we come back, and that's the sacred return. The sacred, over and over, we just come back to this experience of what's here right now. What am I feeling through my senses? What is all of this arising in? What is this formlessness, this energy? Like, something is alive and conscious. Like, what is that? And we can't really do that exploration when we're caught up in our thoughts and personal identities and personal problems.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like suddenly there's that openness that's there to just actually live reality, right? Because yeah,
we get to live it. We get to see, like, this is what's possible, and then it comes down to really what's happening in the moment. If you're playing with your children, you're present playing with your children. If you're chopping vegetables, if you're whatever you're doing, that it's lit up by that aliveness when that's known and conscious.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's often when we like doing something, we feel that joy. And maybe it's because we are so fully alive in the moment, because we are enjoying it so much. So we're so open.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But it's also good to notice that the enjoyment isn't just from the activity, or just from, like, if you receive a gift that you think is great and then you feel good about it, or you feel joy. It's not necessarily the gift. There's something in that experience of enjoyment or appreciation, or when we feel generous towards someone, or just feeling loving, that there's something in that that's a portal, that's a way in. It's an aspect of true nature, of how that's expressed in life.
Yeah. Yeah, because our true nature is always there, if we enjoy the moment or not, doing something we don't like to do, or it doesn't matter, but it's like you automatically open up for the aliveness of the moment when you're doing something you enjoy. It's so much easier just to not be lost in a story of your mind.
Yeah. And like you say, it's we have preferences. I like this moment, I don't like that moment. I want to be happy and I don't like it when I'm sad. And these are all mental ideas that divide us from reality, separate us from life, where we reject the moment. So if you're upset about something, it's like, oh, I want that fixed because I don't like this moment the way it is. That's all about the personal identity, the mind, believing the mind. And the possibility always is to recognize that those are just thoughts coming through. They don't have, we can give them meaning and interpretation, but we don't have to. There's an option there to see, like, this is just thinking coming. Consciousness does whatever happens, whatever feelings come, whatever life situations appear. Consciousness is just going, this, this, it's this, it's like this. It doesn't have preferences. It doesn't push and pull. There's a non-resistance to all of life experience, all experience, from the point of view of consciousness. And it's possible to live that.
Yeah. Yeah, where the judgments are not there anymore. And so what happens is not like you're not resisting it, you could say. It's an automatic acceptance of what happens.
Exactly. Yeah. And many of us have judgments, not only of other people or situations, but a lot of self-judgment. The inner critic is it's really a source of suffering for a lot of people. And it's only, not to minimize it, but it's only a voice in the head that's going, blah, 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 you're this, you're that, and then we believe that. But if we take away the believing of it, it's just words floating through. That's all. And it doesn't actually have any personal meaning.
Yeah. Yeah, because we take so much personal as well. But that's the whole feeling of being separate. Everything becomes personal. And
that's right.
Yeah.
And we think about ourselves a lot and our problem. If we find ourselves steeped in our personal problems, that's a signal that there's something here to be investigated, because the separate self has kind of gotten some energy. It's been activated. So there's something there to look at.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we can, all the time we can see when we are actually getting off the track of just resting in our natural being.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Exactly.
I think all the distractions and all the beliefs and concepts that we hang so much onto, and the habits, the ingrained habits, they kind of fall away as we don't pay attention to them.
That can happen as we take, because attention is like juice, it's fuel. So what we pay attention to is what grows, it's what has energy in it. So if we're carrying out a pattern, or an addiction, or we're paying attention to some negative thoughts that are running through our minds, that's what has energy and attention and aliveness in us. That's what we think is who we are. But when we give our attention, we take our attention away from those objects and we rest in being, we paying attention here, it's just consciousness aware of itself, then there's that sense of deep peace. But I don't want to make it sound like it's simple, but for many people, it's not easy, because some of these patterns are deeply ingrained in our conditioning. And it has an aspect of being ingrained in our bodies as well. Because if we, like an example is when we're young, if something happens that's challenging and we have a feeling around it, we have a reaction and no way to process that reaction. Like say you're 5 years old and something happens, and there aren't people around who can recognize that we have a difficult reaction, that we need support, that we don't know how to, we're too young, we don't know how to process feelings like that, so we need some help. And if we don't have that in our situation, which happens to lots of us, then that feeling goes underground. We might call it the unconscious. It's suppressed, but it gets stuck in the body. So the body is a really useful interface. It's like a way in to our direct experience in the moment, so that we can understand and appreciate and give love to those experiences that had to hide out when we were young because there was no other option. And now we can bring them into the light of awareness and feel them and give them the space that they need for liberation. And it's a process, it's a process.
Yeah, but it's like now there's love and care. You yourself can just be, your being can be the love and care.
That's right.
All that.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. And when we know that, most of us when we're 5 or whatever, we don't know that. We don't have that sense or that possibility. And lots of, it's very rare to know anything about this teaching. And I find it absolutely amazing that we can bring this openness to these very difficult experiences, and then they transform. And it's because we change our relationship to them. We're not keeping them pushed away and in the shadows, but allowing them to come out into consciousness. It changes our whole experience of the human life, ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also like how you talk about the whole bodily aspect, because I think there's something about the body that holds a lot more than we know. There's a lot of unconscious that we are not even aware of, but maybe the body remembers everything, right? That's what you hear. And yeah.
There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and the body remembers, because when we're young, we may not have the words or the capability of going on, but the body knows. Like even if like say something difficult happens when we're 6 months old, before we have language capabilities, the body reacts. Infants are very reactive to their worlds. They're all about survival, and they're super sensitive. And so like say an infant is hungry and the parent doesn't come to give it food, it's like really in a hyper state of panic and terror even. And it's all body at that point. And so, and if it doesn't have a way to move through to process, it gets stuck energetically inside. And so these bodily practices that are so useful and being talked about now in the world of trauma, they're essential to be able to give the space to the body to begin to unfreeze itself, to move, to allow there to be space for these sensations, which are the precursors to our feelings, to allow these sensations to have space. And it's a beautiful, liberating, freeing process when we let ourselves engage in it.
Yeah. And then the body probably also becomes very relaxed. Like not only the mind relaxes, but the body relaxes.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's called deep rest for a reason. You know, it's like, and it's a non-doing, you know, when we live in the belief of the separate self, that's who we are, life is doing, you know, we're fixing, we're controlling, we're, you know, solving, we're judging, we're doing lots of mental activity, and we follow with our actions. You know, there's a lot of doing, and the resting in our true nature is non-doing. Stop. It's just breathe. It's here. It's resting. It slows down. We get quiet. We go beneath the mind and we touch into the stillness that's here. Yes, and we can feel that and be that and live here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then live life as that. Sounds wonderful, beautiful. Like that sounds like a beautiful existence to live as that restful person, you could say. But you can still interact with the world and do a job, but you have a whole different way about it, I think. Yeah, where there's not
you realize that everything is you know, and I know that's part of the title of this summit. It's about like, objects are you, whatever forms, all forms, they come from consciousness. So in that sense, there's no separation. And when that's actually known, it makes us tread lightly on the earth. It changes how we are in our relationships. We don't see difference so much. We see sameness and oneness way more than we see difference. And, you know, it affects all of it, you know, how busy we are. I know that's true for me. It's like, I can certainly get busy, but, you know, there's this draw, really, this call to just like stay super present and just keep it balanced, so that there's this awareness that's consciously here in everyday life.
Yeah.
And then there's the qualities of the heart, love, the way we are in our relationships, the way we, you know, in just the mundane, you know, situations that come up in our lives, we bring a different kind of energy to it that's super connected and intimate, and, you know, it's alive. We get to actually live this life. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like a beautiful human being and a beautiful way of living life. Yeah. Yeah.
And even when it's hard, you know, hard things happen to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, just being able to bring that care to these moments also. And some can't. Really hard things happen, and we, you know, we lose it, for example, or we, you know, we just can't be aware. The feelings are too strong and we need to distract, or, you know, and then to have compassion for ourselves around that. And then when the time is right, to kind of readjust and begin to, again, do the sacred return, come back, look within, and find again that beautiful ground of being from which we can live.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like an act of balancing too, right? Like, yeah, you can always find the balance again.
Yes, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much. What was your website?
So my website is my name. It's gailbrenner.com. It's GAILBRENNER.com. And I regularly have events, either just groups, you know, for a morning or something. And then I have a 6-week course coming up in October, and that's on trauma and awakening. Yeah, that's where to get information about my work.
Yeah. And you've also written a few other books, and they're all pointing to your true nature and how to see that for yourself when when you can see through all the thoughts and emotions and embrace everything as well. And
yes, and they all have the theme of how do we live this, you know, and embodied awakening. You know, how do we know this truth and lose it sometimes? We forget. And how does that affect, you know, a difficult relationship, or, you know, making a choice about which job I should take, or, you know, what do we do with things we don't like? You know, how do we approach, these are normal human things that happen. So how can we bring this beautiful possibility of peace and openness and aliveness to even those hard moments? That's what I'm really interested in.
yeah. Yeah, so that suffering becomes optional, right? Instead of,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Gail.
Oh, thank you, Susan. I'm so happy that you invited me to be here.
Yeah. Thank you.